You know, my intention was to talk a little bit about wheels and wheel covers, increase just the general knowledge of how these things evolve. And also, if you're looking for a wheel for your particular car, and you're at our swap meet that Jeff's going to put on, you find something there, you'll hopefully have enough knowledge to understand what'll work on your car and what won't. But indeed, after Chris gets done, you'll know the rights and wrongs on a year-by-year basis. I was just trying to say what'll work on my car. So you're not buying a drum brake wheel and putting it on your 66 Corvette and find out, hey, it doesn't have clearance for a disc brake. So anyway, with that, I thought I would do the obvious thing, start in chronological order. And here we have a picture of a wheel that is on my 53 Corvette. It's actually, I think, a 54 wheel.
Well, now the reason I have these wheels is I bought a 62 and had all the wrong wheels on it, so that's why I became a little bit knowledgeable on it. I was also a test engineer in a test lab in the early 80s. I tested the 84 Corvette wheels. And later on I was a release engineer, design engineer. But I never did the Corvette wheels. I did everything else but that. So the 53 wheel is basically the same as the 49 through 54 passenger wheel. Looks completely different than the other wheels. And you notice the holes. The only difference is we didn't use the clips on the Corvette. So you can buy a 49 wheel, take the clips off, and you'd have the right wheel. And they are riveted. We'll get into that more later, but they are riveted. So that's the basics on.
So the 53 versus 54, what's the difference is this here too, right?
Yeah, that's all different. Yeah, 54 and 54 through 55 had a completely different section here.
Oh, I see.
You know, remember when GM did wheels, they often double tooled wheels with different sources. And we wouldn't use one source forever and ever unless the plant went down. Because you can't stop the plant. You have to have wheels to build a car. So we often double tooled for different manufacturers, different companies, in case there was a strike or something, or breakdown in their tools. Well, this here, you know, it was on my Corvette. It doesn't have that double hump, which I don't think the 54s are supposed to have it.
Okay.
But there's always something different out there. This one's awful corroded, but I've got some pictures of wheels with different dates on them, and there's a lot of discrepancies out there on what fits what. It's kind of tough to figure it out. So that's interesting.
I wanted to get a shot of every wheel cover that was used on Corvettes when I failed right at square one, because about the first 25 Corvettes used Bel Air wheel covers in 1953, and they had it looked like a sombrero or something in the center. So this is the hubcap that you'll find on most 53s, and then 54 and 55. This hubcap happens to be one of the reissue ones, and I've taken a picture of is when they reissued these things, they didn't have any provision for the little flippers on there. So there's a guy in New England that'll put that little divot in your wheel cover, and then you can put your flippers on it, and they will look like the real thing. And here's a couple of flippers, and if you're judging, you can put your mirror behind that, and you can see where these flippers are made by Corvette Central, so they're probably not the original ones. Have we confused them enough on 53, 4, and 5?
They are riveted,
Okay.
and they are shared with a 55 through 56 passenger car.
Here's a picture of what I label as a 56 to 62 wheel, and Chris will show you that they aren't all the same. But what's really unique about these is that they still have a large valve stem hole,
Yep.
and they had 4 nubs, and the nubs were there to retain the wheel cover. The wheel cover didn't have the barbs on the OD like the 53, 4, and 5 wheel covers. They had like the ring was proud and they had to snap over them. And I've seen people try to put these hubcaps that were used from 56 to 62 on wheels without the nubs, and rest assured they don't stay in place. You know, I've seen them put on with silicone and all kinds of other gack, and you take a turn kind of hard, and that wheel cover is going to take its own path around that.
Right.
This is 1956 to 1958 wheel cover. You'll notice that the ornament is perpendicular. You know, if you put the valve stem hole down at 6 o'clock, you'll be able to read the ornament. So there's some eagle-eyed, observant pinhead judges that'll deduct you from putting this ornament on in the wrong. You can put it on 4 different ways. Only one way is correct. And we'll get into this later. I got some pictures. You'll see in 1959 they put some slots around the perimeter. If you're interested, we can pass these around. You can see the retaining ring around the outside.
So is this the retaining ring before the nubs or after the nubs we're talking about?
This is what the nubs engage on.
Right.
Okay, that little, that pops over, and that's what keeps these wheel covers
What did they do
made
in
into.
54? What did they do in
They
54?
had barbs around the
Okay.
perimeter, so they'd screech when you put them
Yeah,
on. So if you force that into a rim with no nubs, it will come off when you do some aggressive sporting driving.
Not on a Michigan road.
That's right, you don't have to make a turn in Michigan, you just drive down the road.
In 56 and 59, that's the nub you're talking about. It's right here. There's 4 of them. They also had the double hump that I guess is on the 54 wheel that you have. So you see the double hump right here? I assume that was added for structure when I was doing testing. You get cracks around this, especially in a wheel like this. You got the point loading there, you get cracks around this. So I assume that year they had to add that double hump there. These wheels also, per the AIM, should have been welded with, and also had dog bones. You've heard dog bones before? That's what they are in the back on these wheels. You see the little, there's 2 of them on each little disc here. They look like dog bones. Yeah, so that's what they're looking for.
Is that where they
there.
welded them?
Yeah, right next to where they weld them. Weld's right above it, if I hold it like this.
Okay.
Inboard of it, inboard. So, there's a couple of welds there.
So you ever find dog bones on riveted wheels?
I don't know, but there are riveted wheels in 57. I've got a document from a racing thing that shows that riveted wheels were released for 56 and 57, but I'm not sure they were used, but there's examples of cars with them, so they must have been.
They must have been SR
Yeah.
cars.
It's, like I said, it's so confusing what they did back then with their, what was released on different things.
There's like an extra step, so this being a nice continuous
Yeah, it's
radius
easier.
in the spider. The spider's the center of the wheel.
And there was no passenger car usage, so these are a Corvette only wheel. So they should be, I think, reasonably rare. I think they're Corvette only. I'm not sure where else GM would have used them. And they often say GM. These ones don't. But this one here, I think I saw, yeah, GM right here. So sometimes you'll see that.
You notice all these wheels have about the same shape of the rim in the back. See this contour here with this slope here? You'll find all the drum brake wheels were kind of shaped this way. And in 1965, when the disc brake comes up, there's like a more square corner in here. Give you clearance for the caliper to ride right up in here. Okay, here's the early wheel cover, a fully restored or over-restored version of the wheel that you're out there fondling. And there's the 59 to 62 wheel cover with the ornament properly installed. And here's what they are, what they look like side by side.
These are much shinier than mine.
Yeah. Yeah. This is courtesy of Danny Summers' magic. Makes them look like chrome. Okay, this is the RPO 684 wheel. They were also used in 62 on the, what was it, 687. These were the big brake wheels. You could, if you got the heavy-duty suspension, you got these wheels. You could also get up the wheels, I think, separately on those cars. They were a ½ inch wider. They were made out of 2 different General Motors wheels, and I don't, the guy who reproduces these, this is a reissue or a fake. You know, it's a spider from one car and a rim from another car that they put together, which still gave you the 4 3/4 bolt circle with provisions for a little dog dish hubcap and a ½ inch wider rim. These cars these rims don't have any nubs on them, so you couldn't put a full wheel cover on these cars. So all the big brake cars, came out with the little hubcap or the one affectionately known as the dog dish. These wheels are really rare. I mean, the last one I saw for sale at Swap Meet that was real, the guy wanted $7,500 for it, for one rim.
Wow.
Yeah, so if you have a big brake car, they have to have these. And the NCRS judges, they all have their little gauges that go in there and look at the specific contour to determine if it's the real thing. Not a cheap car to counterfeit. These are the riveted wheels. The wheels that we've shown you here are welded. This is a riveted wheel. You see the 3 rivets back there. There's no dog bones in the back to be seen. And here, this is the only example of 58 dog dish that I could come up with. And it's, I bought it because I just had to have it. But this 1 year only, and you can see
This was for the 5.5 inch wheel?
this for the 5.5 inch wheel, 58 only. These wheel covers, or these caps were made out of brass. And you could make them look like that with the palm of your hand, putting them on. They're very fragile, and because they're brass, if you didn't have them lined up exactly right and you whacked them with your rubber mallet, they would actually split. And so the survival rate was poor. 58 was probably the most vulnerable one. It only had 3 little spinners in there and no reinforcements around the perimeter. And you watch, they got a little smarter in 59, and they put some additional darts in there, which made them a little more robust. So you had 6 of them on a 59. This is the set that I had reconditioned. They started off looking like the 58 cap that you saw before, and after about $1,100 worth of metal finishing and chrome plating, they can look like that. You see, but it looks very similar to 58. And finally, in 1960, they got it pretty robust. And this is a set that they're off the cover. You see, the difference is they've got a couple of circumferential ridges here, which really stiffen them up. So most of the stuff that you see out there, these were used from 1960, 61, and 62 for 3 years. They're the most common ones, but they're the best ones because they're the most robust because of the additional metal forming that was done. So these hold up pretty well. So here you see all 3 of them side by side. The Evolution, you know, 58, add a couple more darts, you got a 59, and then you put the circumferential ridges, you got 60 to 62 wheel dog dishes.
56 through 59 were pretty much welded with some riveted, it sounds like, especially later on out. And when you get to the 60, 62, they were pretty much all welded as far as I can find. So I don't think you find any riveted wheels for 60 through 62. And there's no dog bones either. If you look in the back, see those little slots that are in there? There's none there now, so you really can't see very well. There's no slots in here, those dog bones. And they still have that double hump.
Early wheels were sprayed, you know, with red, and then they went with, some were sprayed with interior color.
Yep.
Like on my 56 Corvette, the wheels are orange like my interior, or you know, the reddish color. In 1958, the wheels were all painted silver, unless it was a big brake car. The 5.5-inch wheels were painted body color. So when you got the half-inch wider wheel with the dog dish, it was body color. 59, they were all black. And then in 60, they got sophisticated again, and they painted all the wheels body color. Okay? And so then they went back to black, and then we're going to talk about 63 and 4 wheels, and then we're going to trick you again on those because they were all black unless you had a black wall tire car. And when you got a black wall tire car, they painted the rim body color. Okay? Even though it had a full wheel cover, you had that little piece of, you could see the edge of the rim sticking out where the wheel weights went. So anyway, this is a 1963 4-wheel. These were extremely rare and desirable, as Mike Bailey will tell you. They've recently reproduced them. These things here were selling for $600 a piece recently. I'm not sure what they go for now that they've reproduced them. But they're the last of the drum brake wheels. See the valve stem hole size is smaller. They're the same. The drop center in the back is the same with the tapered edge. I might have a picture of that for you. Yeah, you see the backside how it slopes. There's no step in it for disc brake clearance. I was too lazy to even wipe that one off. Okay, this is a 65/6 wheel. Those were 5.5 inches wide. We'll talk a little bit, I'm going to get into the aluminum wheels. They did an optional wheel starting in 63. They were aluminum, they were a half-inch wider. The story, to the best of my knowledge, is that they were released for production in 1963. They were released to service parts operations, but when they built the cars with these wheels on it, there was a problem with porosity, and many of them wound up going flat out in the ship lot, and the plant manager said, pull all those aluminum wheels off, put steel wheels on them. So there was, the NCRS's judging position is that as delivered to the dealership. So as far as we know, no cars came from the plant equipped with those wheels. Now the dealers could buy knockoff wheels from service parts operations and install them on the car. So indeed, your pal might have been able to go out there and buy one with the wheels on it from the dealership. Yeah, these were made by Kelsey Hayes And the first ones were released with a 2-bar spinner. And if you look at your early sales brochures for a 1963 Corvette, there's a picture in there of an aluminum wheel with a 2-bar spinner. And then the later generation of that 63 brochures, where one of them had black and one had a red car on the cover, but one with whichever one, the second generation of that brochure showed a 3-bar spinner on it. But they never sent any from the factory with either type of those spinner on it. Okay, this is a 65/6 Corvette aluminum wheel. Unique because it's a 15-inch wheel that's got provisions for a disc brake caliper. And you can see underneath all this dirt, you can see the step that's in here. And this is where the caliper would ride and needs that extra clearance. You try to put the 63 4-wheel in that car, you won't be able, when you go to clamp it down there, it'll just bind on the caliper and you won't be able to turn the wheel. And 67, they went to this is the first year for the rally wheel. This wheel was used as the base wheel in all the Corvettes, 15/6 inch, so it's got a little bit wider again. They were also used on full-size Chevrolet passenger cars that got disc brakes. You know, your big Impalas. At that time, if you remember, this was the first year for disc brakes on full-size B bodies. They were 4-piston calipers, similar to the design that the Corvette used. They had larger pistons, and they were 2 1/16 bore instead of 1 7/8. And the way you can tell that I guess the picture that I took of the DC didn't come out well enough for Linda to replace it, but right here they stamp a couple of letters, and if you're looking for the right rally wheels for your Corvette, look for a DC or a DG to be stamped there. There's a lot of wheels that are similar to this that you might be thinking of buying, and then find out later on that it belonged on a Camaro or something like that, or a Monte Carlo. And probably the safest way to determine what it is if you can carry a trim ring with you. Because the trim rings that were used on these wheels, you know, they'll fill up, when you put them in here, they will go down there and bottom out, right down in the bottom there, and they fit this wheel very perfectly. If you try to put that trim ring on a Camaro wheel, it won't go on. There's not enough, you know, the wheel's so backspaced on a Camaro that the trim ring won't go on there. Likewise, if you're looking for a newer rim, the only Corvette wheel, they used a wider trim ring in 1968, and we put it on the 7-inch rally wheel that came out, and those were stamped AG. Looked just like this, but they're an inch wider, but the big trim ring would bottom out on that. So if you took, you know, that's one way to know a 67, if you know, take your tape measure with you. For the 7-inch rim, there's a lot of cars that use 7-inch rally wheels. But the Corvette is the only one that will accommodate the big trim ring. All the rest of the cars that ran the 7-inch rally wheel had more back spacing, and so they could only accommodate the small, narrower trim ring. Same trim ring that was used in 68 was used in 69 and newer. And when you put it on an 8-inch wheel, it no longer bottomed out, big gap. So, but the Corvette's the only user of the 8-inch wheels. So those are really plentiful because they use them from what, 69 to 82. You can find them everywhere, and if you find an 8-inch wheel, you know it's a Corvette wheel, even though they got them on every Chevelle and Impala running around. Digressing here, this is a 63 wheel cover. We talked about the dog dish wheel cover, so this is, now we're going back. 63, this is a late 63 wheel cover, and it's that way because they were originally, the early ones were painted like with a frosted gray finish in here, a dull aluminum, look very attractive, but a very complicated piece to make and a very expensive one to restore also, because it's got the outer stainless rim, which you got to restore, and then you got to buy 6 of these bars at $27 a piece and a spinner. So restoring one of these wheel covers is about $1,000. I mean, a set of those is about $1,000 project, because you got to buy all those pieces, plus, you know, take all the hammer marks that somebody's, you know, installed on the outside of that by putting them in with their heel, the heel of their foot or a hammer. So anyway, 63 late. I got another. This is a 64 late wheel cover. You see, it's just 2 pieces. The spinner comes off. The center of these things were also the early 64s. They tried frosting them then too. And I think they figured out that they couldn't get the paint to stay on. Most of them that were frosted are pretty ugly looking. And you could spend a lot of time making them. They're very attractive if you restore them, if you got an early '64 car and do them. But I wouldn't take them to the quarter car wash and blast them with anything, because I didn't find anything good that sticks really well. 65. Probably I think they copied a Maxwell House coffee can to make these. It's absolutely the most fragile, junky wheel cover I think they ever put on a Corvette. Apologies to those of you that like that old 65s like me, but it's a good excuse to buy a set of knockoff wheels to me, because these are just so easy to damage. There's really very little structure to them, and when you put them on there, you can take your handprint and leave it right in the outside of that disc, installing them on the car. And in '66, they kind of redeemed themselves, and they made something that's much more robust. You see, they got a nice deep rib around the perimeter, and it's, much, probably a little bit more difficult to make, but a more robust wheel. 1 year only as well. And finally, 1967. This is, you can see the 67 trim ring. It's got this, it's very distinct on the outside, if you can, kind of memorize the way this step looks. There's a lot of aftermarket trim rings that I've seen that have got slots down here, that don't have this edge here, that don't have the step here. I've seen all kinds of violations. They'll all work, but if you want the real thing, this is what a 67 trim ring looks like. They were retained with 4 of these clips on the back, and if you are abusive at all, you can render them useless. When you're installing these on your car, you do it very, you look at what you're doing, you orient the wheel properly, and just go boop, and then pop it, and those clips will go right on. But if you're impatient, you start wailing on it with your rawhide mallet, you'll just close those clips up and eventually succeed in breaking them off, and you'll have a trim ring that becomes a projectile when you're driving down the road. Yeah, if you do want to take this off, the way you do it is you insert your screwdriver right next to the clip and you pop it off there. You don't grab it somewhere else and start wrenching on this thing, because you'll succeed in mutilating your trim ring. And that gets expensive. Okay, this is the 15 by 8 inch trim ring. Also, copied by the Taiwanese and everybody else, but the real ones, there's like a small little radius in the top here. If you can find one where the flange isn't all narfed up where somebody ran into a curb. These things were used starting in 1968. In '69, they put them on a 8-inch rally wheel and an F70-15. And the widest thing sticking out from that rim was that trim ring. So when you pulled up to a curb, the trim ring was the thing that tried to lift your car over the curb, not the tire. And so eventually they started putting bigger tires on. But if you had a '69 Corvette with a stock tire on, you let it fall on its backside, it'd clank when it hit the ground, because the tire had the sidewalls going out like that to mate with the rim. Here's what I was trying to describe to you before. When you put the trim ring on the wheel, how it goes all the way down to the bottom on some wheels. If it goes all the way down to the bottom, it's a 7-inch Corvette wheel. If it doesn't fit at all, it's some other flavor. Okay, 1967, the little center caps look like this. And if you'll notice closely, they say Chevrolet Motor Division disc brakes. Okay? And then this horrible picture here shows the new ones, which just say Chevrolet Motor Division, and it doesn't say disc brakes. So this is a service replacement part that I'm not sure why they would go through the trouble. Oh, here you see it better. The trouble of tooling something and making it different. But this is another thing that'll get you a deduction. You might find some NOS parts out there at your swap meet. Oh God, this is gonna look good on my car. And you put them on there, and some eagle-eyed judge is gonna whack you for having them on your car. Okay, and then we went to the popular center cap that was used all the way up till '82. Now we talk a little bit about the optional wheels. These were the wheels that were released, like I say, like that John was talking about, that didn't have enough aluminum in them. This is actually a '64 wheel with a '62 spinner on it to try to simulate the thing. I've seen these wheels done where there's natural cast aluminum finish in here. I've also seen some that were painted. And I guess, personally, I wouldn't deduct for either. And if it was mine, I would paint them all aluminum in there, because it looks really nice, because everything gets a nice, dull aluminum gives you the same consistent color inside there. There's a lot of different, not a lot, there's a couple different versions of the 2-bar spinner, but the difference is in that ornament that's in there. I've seen some that had like a, I'm not sure, a black ornament in there with like, looked like a Pontiac V in it or something, but these are the ones that were released for the Corvette. I know these were right. I've got some really good pictures of my old styling car when Mr. Knudsen owned it, and it has these wheels on it. Okay, 64, they went to the 3-bar spinner.
I stopped off at the quick side for some beer and cigarettes. The old man took my money as he stared at my Corvette. He said I had one just like her son in 1963, till the man down at the bank took her from me. Oh, she was hotter than a $2 pistol. She was the fastest thing around.